according to Caucasoids, 600,000 Caucasoids migrated out of Egypt and then wandered the desert for 40 years. Now, any Caucasoid person watching this, I'm not attacking you, but let's just be clear here. You couldn't live in the Sahara Desert for 40 days. Let's just be honest here. So you want us to believe that 600,000 Caucasoids left Egypt and then wandered the desert for 40 years and made it to Israel and established a nation. Meanwhile, you can't even go to the beach right now without getting sun cancer. So for one, that is scientifically an impossible story. Now, when we dealing with Egypt, right, and the Jews, historical times and events in Egypt, right, and if possible, I would like you to write these down so you can answer these.
Yeah, I'm writing the whole time.
Yes, sir. They say that the Jews built the Temple of Ramesses during their time in Egypt under enslavement of the Pharaoh Ramesses, right? Now, I'm going to tell you how that's false. Egypt is a 100,000-year-old civilization. The Egyptologists are complete liars, and they totally fabricated the story of Egypt. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is to prove not only was the Temple of Ramesses built before y'all allegedly got there, but here's the issue I'm having. And I want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, General Seti, for this point. John Champollion, which was not a linguist, never, ever went to school for linguistics, but somehow was accredited with being the decipherer of 4,000 Egyptian hieroglyphic characters with a 26-letter alphabet. Somehow, John Champollion claims off of the cartouches in Egypt, he was able to decipher the word Ramesses. And this was in 1822. So the reason that this is critical and the reason that this is important is because in the 1611 Holy Bible, the King James Version, it states that the Temple of Ramesses was built by the Hebrews under slavery. Under terms of enslavement. Now, the problem with that is, how did a word that came out 211 years after it was allegedly discovered end up in a book that was written 211 years allegedly before it was discovered? So that's the issue. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because these biblical stories have been recently modified and then backdated to give themselves an ancient presence where there is none. The oldest Torah, according to National Geographic, scientifically documented and carbon dated, is from the 1200s. It's 800 years old. And by you being an Orthodox Jew, I am assuming that you're well aware of, the fact that Orthodox Jews don't believe that the Torah can be read. And the reason that that's important is because the reason that Orthodox Jews don't believe that the Torah can be read is because the Hebrew language was not fully established until 1881 by Yosef ben Yehuda. And the Old Testament, which was allegedly written by Moses, could not have been written by Moses because the Hebrew alphabet, which is nothing more than a combination of German and Yiddish, did not come out until after Moses' death. So how did Moses write a testament in a language that did not exist during his lifetime? Now, as I continue to go down these notes to respond to what you said, okay? Another question I would like for you to answer is this. Let's assume that Moses was a Caucasoid, okay? And I believe from my research, Moses is a fictional character that's plagiarized off of the Pharaoh Thutmose III. But let's just deal with biblical genealogy here and religious ideology. If black people was on the planet first, which we know this to be a fact, and Caucasoid entities have been on this planet for no more than 4,500 to 6,000 years, right? Why did God never speak to us? Why did God watch us live on this planet for millions of years? watch us navigate this world for millions of years. They found Egyptians in the Grand Canyons. They found Egyptians in Japan. They found Egyptians all around the world, not just in Africa. Egypt was a global empire. Black people were the first people to circumnavigate and civilize this planet. And all of our history is being hidden. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because why did God wait until the white man or the Caucasoid man stepped foot allegedly into Africa to decide he wanted to speak to them as his chosen people? Because the reason I'm having an issue with this doctrine is not only does it promote pedophilia, because it does. The Torah says that you can molest. I'll pull a verse up if you need to see it. The Torah says that you can molest a little girl, and it doesn't matter as long as she's 3 years. I'm about to pull it up right now. So not only does the Torah promote pedophilia, it promotes slavery. But the real question is, what made God decide he want to talk to Caucasians or Caucasoids and ignore black people for millions of years? Straight up. And if we know that black people were here first, if we were to actually acknowledge the Adam and Eve story, the Adam and Eve will be black by default, which means all of the descendants of Adam and Eve would be black by default. And the reason that this is important is because the Bible is based off astrology, as I stated. The 12 tribes of Israel are nothing more than the 12 zodiac signs. For example, the tribe of Judah, which is the lion, is nothing more than the Leo constellation. This is why Jesus told his disciples, when they get to a certain location, they'll see a man bearing a pitcher of water, because the pitcher of water is the age of Aquarius that we're going into as we're leaving the age of Pisces. So all of these monotheistic religions are actually based off astrology, and they're nothing more than occult platforms that Freemasons use to communicate with each other. And the reason I brought that up is because you brought up the definition of Abraham, who is the father, who Moses is a descendant of. Abraham, by definition, means Abram. That's how you the original spelling of Abraham is Abram, A-B-R-A-M. A-B, Ab means before, and then R-A-M is Ram, which means the zodiac sequence before the constellation of Aries, because Moses represents the age of Aries. This is why when you look at any statue of Moses from antiquity, he has horns like a ram, because the Bible is just based off astrology, and the Torah is based off astrology. These are not actual events that actually took place. Now, as we continue to as I continue to go upon some points that you made, or speak upon some points that you made, also I wanted to talk about the commandments in Mount Sinai, right? Because Sinai by definition just means heat and high point of the sun. And we have to ask ourselves, in dealing with reality, Moses, especially if he was white or Caucasoid, if Moses was a Caucasoid, it's no way in hell he went up at the highest point of that mountain underneath the sun and came down without sunburn, let alone was he strong enough to carry some giant stone tablets. That's not physically possible. It's not logically possible. Just like the story of Noah's Ark. If we by definition deal with the story of Noah's Ark, and we deal with it from a realistic point of view, all of them animals would have started to fight and kill each other out of hunger. Also, they said there were penguins on Noah's Ark. So we have to ask ourselves, how the hell did animals that are not native to Africa get on an ark, survive in an environment that it is impossible for them to survive in, and then end up on other continents that the ark never even went to? In the story of Noah's Ark is stolen from the Egyptian story Nu-Ankh, which is a spiritual boat that my ancestors said you get on when you righteous, and it takes you into the realm of Duat, which is the spiritual realm. Now, continuing to go down, right? I want to talk about Exodus again, because the Exodus is very important to Jewish tradition, especially when we're dealing with you guys' holidays, specifically the first holiday in the month of Nisan, which is March, via the Passover. Now, according to biblical rhetoric, the Passover took place when God slaughtered, I believe it was rams, and if it wasn't rams, I'm gonna just say animals. God slaughtered animals, sprinkled their blood on specific doorsteps so that he could differentiate the Hebrews from the Egyptians allegedly, and God passed over Egypt and liberated the Hebrews from Egypt. That story, be it that it took place in March, once again is allegorical. And the Passover is just symbolic to the sun passing over the equinox as it comes from the southern hemisphere back into the northern hemisphere. So what's happening is astrological allegories are being taken as factual events, or they're being misinterpreted as factual events that never happened. Now, when we continue to go down this, as I continue to go down this list of talking points, and I think I got like 5 left. Once again, I want to come back to the Temple of Ramesses, right? Because you brought up Egypt. There's no way that Caucasoids were enslaved by, I'm assuming, and I have to ask you really quick, and you can answer this yes or no. If you believe that Hebrews were enslaved in Egypt, do you believe that the Egyptians who enslaved them were Negroid like me or Caucasoid like people that are not me?
I think neither. I showed you the hieroglyphics. So I believe they were dark, but not necessarily like Western African dark, but Northern African dark.
Okay, now I want to bring this up. Right? Yeah. Because my ancestors left clear, they didn't leave no room for misunderstanding about who they were. Okay? They didn't leave no room for misunderstanding. You can clearly see black people on this wall. Black, black, black. Let's go to another wall. Black, another wall. Black. Okay? Now we come here with the Greeks. You see what they doing, what them Caucasoids doing, but you also see they not black. So you see where homosexuality and pedophilia come from. But let me keep going. Black. But wait, let me keep black. Okay? Now there's another thing you brought up, right? You brought up the Hyksos. Now the Hyksos are invaders to Egypt. And as you can see, you see the pharaohs right here fighting the Hyksos. This is a black man or a Negroid fighting Caucasoids. So let's just be clear on that. The Egyptians have not only genetically been proven to be African, just like they've been genetically proven to be vegan, but they historically let us know that they were black. So the question is, how did black people enslave a bunch of Caucasoids and teach them to build a temple that was already there? Because if we taught y'all how to build pyramids, you would have built them for yourself. That's just period. That's just period. There is no pyramids. There is no extravagant monuments in Israel that could even hold a candle to what Africans built, not just in Egypt, but all around the world. And another thing I want to bring up is this image right here. Okay. Now this image is called Smiting of the Enemy by Pharaoh Seti. Now this image also, this is a painting from the pyramids. You see what color my ancestors said the invaders were. So here's my thing. What Judaism is attempting to do is it's attempting to inject itself into black history from a fictitious point of victimization that never happened. You were not slaves in Egypt. You were invaders. And if I'm lying, then prove to me that you are who you say you are, and that the people in Egypt today are who they say they are. You cannot do that. And the Arabs cannot do that, because you were not victims of Egypt. You were invaders and destroyers of Egypt. Now I want to go here. Okay. If you look at these pyramids, right? These pyramids have water damage and sand damage on the south side of these pyramids. And 250, listen to the word, 250 genealogists have confirmed that these pyramids are no less than 30,000 years old. So that means not only the pyramids, but the temple of Osiris has been confirmed, and the temple of Ramesses has been confirmed, the temple of Isis has been confirmed, and all of them. If the temple of Ramesses was built at least 50,000 years ago, how did we enslave y'all for y'all to build it 6,000 years ago when we built it allegedly before we even knew you? So that's a lie. It never happened. Now, as I continue to come down, right, and hit two more of your talking points, I just want to pull this up. I want to pull this up right here, because I don't want nobody to ever think I'm lying. Okay. Now we talk about we talk about the Torah, okay, and we talk about the age of the Torah. I want to just hit this real quick. I want to hit this real quick. Okay, so you brought up the Torah, right? Now I brought up backdating, and I want to make this clear again, since we talk about Ramesses, so you can see where I'm going. In 1822, Jean Champollion allegedly deciphered and discovered the word Ramesses. Yet, in 1611, King James wrote that the Hebrews were forced to build the temple of Ramesses underneath the dictatorship of Pharaoh Ramesses. Now, here's the problem with that. As I stated, how did a book insert a word into it that allegedly didn't come out till 211 years after the book was written? And I'll tell you why. Because what your community has done is you guys have created this story, and then through the invention of the printing press in the 1400s, you have backdated the story to give it ancient existence that it does not have. And one example of that, okay, is from right here. Carbon dating confirms the world's oldest Torah scroll, okay? And if you look at the date, it's from 1155 to 1225. So the oldest Torah scroll is not even 800 years old. So this is why we don't see y'all in museums. You see us in museums. The British Museum alone, just the British Museum alone has 14 million artifacts that is stole from Egypt, even though it only puts 10 to 100,000 on display. They have 14 million in that basement. You don't see no Israeli artifacts nowhere. You don't see no Bibles or no Torahs or none of that have been validly proven nowhere. The Rosetta Stone is fake. It's not real. So Caucasoid history has been completely falsified and introduced to Black people in order for y'all to give us a fictitious validity of historical existence that y'all do not have. So I want to say this before I end here. And I want to make sure, I want to say this before I end here. This is my last point. If you take away religion, right? Because I would like for you to explain to me your history and your genetic origins without using religion. But if you take away religion from non-Black people, if you take away the evolution theory, which is also a lie, from non-Black people, Caucasoids have not explained where they come from. So I want to be clear on that. Outside of God made man from dust and, using monotheism, outside of the evolution theory, which both have been proven to be falsified, both have been proven to be lies. If we take those away, okay, y'all have not explained where y'all came from. We don't really know y'all. Y'all just walked up on us one day, told us that y'all was missionaries, gave us a damn book, and we've been believing it. And so outside of answering the questions that I've laid out, I would also like for you to explain, if you can, your origins without using religion and without using evolution. And I guarantee you, you cannot scientifically or historically do it. Now, and I'm done.
All right. That was quite something. All right. I wrote down everything that you said.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to attempt to answer every single one. The idea that we started with the mitochondrial Eve, I actually think is a beautiful discovery, because up until I learned about that concept, anybody who said that we started from one human, like Adam and Eve, the Bible story, people laughed at it. They said, that's not possible. And then the scientists were like, well, maybe we did come from You back?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. The fact of Eve being black, like, I'm not coming here to say that humankind didn't start black. Like, I'm not at all coming to say, I don't know. I think that the idea of mitochondrial Eve and us coming from her, like, let me put it to you this way. Tell me what you think of this.
See,
Before
you go, not to cut you off. Before you go, I want you to understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you are not a descendant of the mitochondrial Eve gene. So what I'm asking you or any Caucasoid to do is to establish genetically where you come from. So let me throw the numbers out, because I want to be all the way on the table so you can honestly answer it.
Okay.
And I have the science. I can pull it up right now if you need me to.
Tell me.
Caucasoid people, Caucasian people, okay, have 98% chimpanzee DNA with only a 2% difference. They have 87% canine DNA, 90% mice DNA. They have chicken DNA, and they have fruit fly DNA, and that is a hybrid combination of species that do not sexually reproduce. And this is science. This is not racism. I'm not attacking no, but this is science. So what I'm saying is this: we come from the mitochondrial Eve DNA. We don't have Neanderthal. We don't have that. We have thinner skulls. Y'all have thicker skulls. We are two different species. And that's okay, because I understand extraterrestrials and all of that. So I'm not attacking. But what I'm saying is, where do you come from genetically?
I'm going to go ahead and answer everything you said in order, and I'll get to everything if you let me. So again, the idea, look at Malcolm X. Malcolm X had a tinge of red hair. Why is that? Because he had a white grandfather. So the idea that race and color of skin can change over time, and I'm not even talking about 2,000 years or 3,000 years, even less, is clear. The color of skin can change over time. That's something that, so it's not a fight between were the original Jews dark or were they not? Besides the fact that we mentioned about King David and other converts joining the Jewish people, and clearly when you're dispersed over time to all across the world, there's going to be changes. But not only that, but also the change in skin color is something that totally makes sense according to science. I was actually researching it before our conversation. It goes both ways. Skin color can go darker, like people from northern India. When you meet people from southern India, you'll find people's skin darker than from the northern region. Why? It's the same people, but when they came to an area that was a hotter climate, it affected them. There's no question it goes both ways. And if you go from Israel or from Africa to Iceland, it's going to affect your skin color over the centuries. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. And there are rabbis that indicate that we were darker at the beginning of time. So Moses, you were talking about being a Caucasian. I don't believe that. And I want to get into Ashkenazi because I probably hear this the most about Ashkenazi. I mean, you saying that Ashkenazi, that it's Nazi socialism, when the concept of the name of Ashkenaz goes back over 1,000 years, and they somehow the idea of socialism, Nazism, which is something that came up in the 1800s, you're saying is something that goes back 1,000 years, makes no sense to me. Neither does judicial. Like I practice jujitsu. I know you're a martial artist. I practice jujitsu. You think J-I-U in Brazilian has to do with Jew? Sounding words together doesn't mean that they mean the same thing. But let's push that aside. And I'm going to go to the Khazar thing too. Mm-hmm. So who are Ashkenazim? According to our tradition, Ashkenazim were those Jews that the Romans destroyed. Jews went to the Spartan went to the Iberian Peninsula, which became Spain and Portugal in that area. And after the Inquisition in 1492, they got pushed to Sfarad, which is Spain. That's where the name Sephardi Jews come from. In 1492, the Christian church in Spain said, Jews, goodbye, either convert to Christianity or you're dead. So once again, by the way, in the last 1700 and on average, every 21 years, one out of over 80 countries have expelled their Jews from where they live because there was a claim of killing Jesus and the blood of Christians, even though the Torah says that we're not allowed to consume blood of any kind, even from an animal. That was the blood libel, that Jews killed Christian children and had their blood. So over history, we've been libeled and kicked out. My point being, Ashkenazim were those that did not go to Turkey or one other place. They went from Israel to Rome, to Italy, and from there to the Danube Valley and the Rhineland areas of the Roman Empire. How do I know that? How do I know they're not Khazars? Khazars are, let's just give the theory for those that don't know. I had to research it after reading so much about those theories. Khazars, the claim of Khazars is that Ashkenazi Jews, light-colored Jews that are from Germany and Russia and Ukraine and all those places, descend from a Turkish royal tribe that converted to Judaism in the 8th century. And after that, they went to Russia and Ukraine instead of coming from Israel and Babylonia. So few reasons why that doesn't make sense. One is in as early as 321 CE. You want to get into history? Here's history. 321 CE, there was a letter from the people of Cologne, Germany, writing to Emperor Constantine. And they ask him, can we have Jewish residents live by us? And Constantine writes back, yes. And Jews were able to come to Cologne. That's 400 or 500 years before these supposed Khazars. Okay? And by the way, there may have been these Khazars, these royal people that converted to Judaism. That's great, but that's not the source of Ashkenazi Jewry. Let's go to DNA. You want to talk about DNA? There's a DNA link between Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews. There's a link between Ashkenazi Jews and Middle Eastern, not African, Middle Eastern ancestry. And there's no link between Khazars. So all the genetic studies, for the most part, I know there's books out there like the 13th by Arthur Kessler. You're going to find, you can find books on any theory you want, but mainstream history and DNA research shows that there's research in the year 2000, there's a year in early 2000s of Ashkenazi Jews having similar gene pools to those from the rest of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. And the same as other Jews. So Harry Oster, Marcus Feldman of Stanford, and others, that we're more similar than we are similar to the people that we were around. Why? Because the Jewish people always had to be kept separate. Another problem with the Khazar theory is that the Khazars, by the year 1000, around then, seem to have vanished. And yet we only see Ashkenazi Jews in Russia and Ukraine about 400 years later. So the timeline doesn't work. And my favorite one is the idea of Yiddish. By the way, Hebrew and Yiddish are different. We'll get into the Hebrew language. I'll get to that. Yiddish is a German and Hebrew mix. It's a Creole. Creole language is when you take your native language and then you combine it with the language of the country you move to. There's no really any Turkish components to Yiddish. Yiddish is literally the Hebrew and the mix of German and a bit of the Latin that came when we got exiled by the Roman Empire from Israel to the German area. For example, when I bless God after I eat food, in Yiddish it's called benchen. Maybe you've even heard that, like to bench. Bench is benediction. Benediction is the term for blessing. So Yiddish is a clear example. And by the way, the same goes for the Sephardic Jews that spoke Ladino. Ladino was Spanish and Hebrew together because we went from Israel, from Hebrew, to a Spanish-speaking place. So medieval, the Jews that we call Ashkenazi, it's just a name that came up later, about 1,000 years later. Those are the Jews that were in Germany called Ashkenaz. Those are the ones that we believe came straight from Israel. And by the way, Europeans never looked at us as white. Like when there's paintings, Michelangelo and others, they paint the Jews as darker, as different. You know, even when they painted Jesus is white, which, by the way, I feel like that's something I'm happy. I want to say for the community at large. It's messed up that in literature and in artwork, Jesus and biblical figures are always painted as white. It's very doubtful that they were white like that. So that's totally something that I don't accept.
Do you subscribe to Jesus?
No, not as the way Christians do.
Right. And you're aware that the Torah says that Jesus is in hell, burning in hell.
So let's divide up all the things you said, because you say New Testament and Talmud. Okay, sorry. So like when you mentioned the stuff about, I'm going to get to it later, but you talked about something. King James Bible says that the Jews built Ramses in Egypt. We don't have that in the Torah. So we'll get to that. Regarding the Talmud claim of Jesus being punished in hell, there are people that say about certain names in the Talmud that it's referring to Jesus. But first of all, like you said, we don't have the J in Hebrew. We use the Yud. So in Hebrew, Joseph is Yosef. Jacob is Yaakov, or Yakub in Arabic. Jesus would have been, let's say, Yeshu. Every example, Jew, which we can get into the term Jew is not a term that we use. Like it's used in America. Like when I say Jacob to you, I'm speaking in the English so that we understand where we're coming from, but we don't speak like that in Hebrew. Okay, So my first point I want to make with all that is that with Ashkenazi Jews are not from Khazars, legitimately from Israel, just like the Sephardic Jews, and we were exiled to foreign places. And also, okay, so let me just see the notes. You talked about, first of all, Freemasonry, you probably know 1,000 times more than I do, but I did look it up. I read that Benjamin Franklin created it. I don't think he was Jewish.
No, that's not true.
Oh, who?
I just don't want nobody to misinform you.
Okay, no, that's cool. And you can come back at me later, but Freemasons, I personally don't know a lot about, but okay. The next thing, what I'm trying to say is not just Jews. I imagine there's a lot of different members of Freemasons, but I'll let you go on that one. You talked about Goy. First of all, I know that Goy seems to be a derogatory term. If you go to the Torah, the original reference, Goy is used a lot, and it means nation. So like the Jewish people themselves are called a Goy Gadol. God says, I will make you into a great nation. Goy is used for nation all the time. The literal translation is the way Jews would call anyone who wasn't Jewish. Goy was that this is another people. So it's possible that some people might use it derogatorily, but the term Goy does not mean that. It means a nation. And just one thing on the side